Yesterday, how we were telling you about how the Fed was talking about third quarter economic growth and how it strengthened. We called him on that, which you can see in our reality check. But turns out productivity of U.S. workers also strengthened last quarter as companies cut costs by keeping payrolls down and squeezing more from their employees. And the Fed also yesterday warned that high unemployment will be the norm for years, according to their forecast. Now, Americans fed up over economic conditions like this continue to protest. Here you see some footage. Last night, Occupy Oakland saw thousands of demonstrators protest. They shut down the port of Oakland, showing the continuing Occupy Wall Street movement and its momentum. They are, of course, the so-called 99%. What about the 1%? CEO of Euro-Pacific Capital, Peter Schiff, has made waves as kind of an ambassador for the 1%. He went out to Occupy Wall Street because he thinks he has some solutions to these folks' problems. The video of it kind of blew up on the web. Here's a clip where he was talking to someone about Walmart.
What am I afraid they're going to do to me?
What is Walmart doing?
You should go and ask the employees that are working in sweatshop type conditions that don't get enough hours, that don't have health care. How is it?
Okay. Then why don't they quit? I mean, Walmart doesn't hold a gun to their head if they can get a better job.
So why did the rape victim get raped? What was she doing?
As you can see, it was quite heated. Earlier, I interviewed him, and I started off by asking, given the Occupy Wall Street protest, which he talked to people and told them why he thinks capitalism is the solution to their problems, I asked him why he thinks that capitalism and freer markets are the solutions. Here's what he said.
Well, because I understand capitalism and I understand what the problems are, and the problems are the result of government intervention. It's not capitalism that created the financial bubble. It was government interference in capitalism. It was artificially low interest rates. It was government subsidies. This is what created the malinvestments, and this is what continues to perpetuate those malinvestments. You know, a lot of the kids there that are protesting are students with a lot of debt. The free market never would have saddled them with all that debt. Without government-guaranteed loans, they never could have borrowed all this money. Without access to cheap government loans, college universities would have been forced to slash their prices. You know, if people couldn't go to school on the government money, they would actually major in things that had significance. They would major in engineering, not, you know, some liberal arts. I mean, you have kids going to school for 5-6 years on government grants and guaranteed loans, studying stuff that has no real relevance to the job market. And then they graduate, they got all this debt, there's no good job prospects out there, because while the government was subsidizing education, they were taxing the job creators in order to pay for the subsidies. And so you know, they simultaneously wipe out all the economic growth or the jobs while they're encouraging kids to go to college to prepare for jobs that don't exist. So this is all stuff that the government has done. And if the government gets out of the way, if we can reduce regulations, reduce taxes, have higher interest rates, we can recreate the type of vibrant economy that might provide employment opportunities for a lot of the protesters.
I want to get into a few of the different aspects that you touched upon. I'll get into interest rates later. But first, when you talk about reducing regulation, let's talk about times in history where there have been fewer regulations. Like in the early 1900s, you saw disasters, you saw tragedies, like in the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, where 146 workers died because they were locked in by their managers and couldn't get out. The free markets didn't protect them from this.
Well, look, there are always going to be accidents. There are accidents, people die in accidents today. You can't pick out one example and say this is because we didn't have enough regulation. I think if you look at that period in its entirety, we achieved substantial economic growth. If you compare the 19th century to the 20th century, and you look at the huge increase in the standard of living for middle class and poorer Americans, their living standards increased a lot faster during the 1900s than they did during the 20th century and now in the 21st. And that's despite the fact that we have a lot better technology today. Imagine if we can combine today's technology with the freedom that we had 100 years ago. I mean, that would be a very dynamic combination that would see an unprecedented growth in living standards. And the only way Americans are really going to see their standard of living rise is if we embrace free market capitalism. If we try to do it through socialism. And we've seen that before. I mean, if we have a socialist revolution in the United States, we're not going to be the first country to try it. I mean, this is Russia TV. You guys went through a revolution in 1917. And look what happened. I mean, it was people felt that they were disenfranchised, that there was a group of, an elite that were oppressing everybody. And so the solution in Russia was to adopt this Marxist ideology. And look at how long the Soviets stagnated. Look at the standard of living that the Soviets endure until they finally, got rid of it. I mean, so we don't want to follow with that example. We want to go back to our founders and relive that example. We want to recreate that revolution of liberty.